The smell of overpriced wine and entitled laughter filled our dining room as I watched my wife transform into someone I barely recognized. Vanna Heslor-Relin sat at the head of our own table like she owned not just the house, but every breath I was allowed to take inside it. "Hayes needs some structure," she announced to her three friends, gesturing toward me with her wine glass like I was a misbehaving dog. "So I've established some new rules for our household." Kalia Darren, the therapist who analyzed everyone except herself, leaned forward with predatory interest. Her dark hair framed a face that always seemed to be dissecting whatever she looked at. "Rules can be very healthy for relationships, Vanna. What kind of structure are we talking about?" Bree Corlin giggled, that high-pitched sound that made my teeth ache. She was the kind of woman who treated other people's marriages like reality television. "Oh, this should be good. Hayes, you're about to get schooled." Ayla Derrick didn't even look up from her phone, where she was probably crafting another social media post about her perfect life. Her fingers moved across the screen with the efficiency of someone who lived for digital validation. "Make sure you film this, Bree. My followers would eat this up." I sat in what used to be my favorite chair, watching my wife orchestrate my public humiliation with the precision of a courtroom attorney, which, coincidentally, she was. Vanna had been promoted to senior associate at Morrison & Associates 6 months ago, and ever since then, she'd been treating our marriage like a case she needed to win. "First rule," Vanna continued, her voice carrying that authoritative tone she usually reserved for depositions. "Hayes speaks only when asked a direct question during dinner parties. No interrupting, no random comments, no attempts at humor." The women nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. Kalia actually took notes in her little leather journal, probably material for her next therapy session with some other poor soul. "Second rule," Vanna said, warming to her theme. "Hayes sits at the side of the table, not the head. The head is reserved for whoever is hosting the conversation." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not the dramatic kind of cold you read about in novels, but the practical cold of realization. The kind that comes when you finally understand exactly where you stand in someone else's priorities. "Third rule," she continued, and I could see she was enjoying this. "Hayes contributes to conversations only about topics he actually understands. No opinions on legal matters, no commentary on our professional lives, no attempts to relate everything back to his little boxing hobby." My little boxing hobby. 20 years of training at Murphy's Gym, teaching kids discipline and self-respect, helping them find confidence they never knew they had. Reduced to a dismissive phrase designed to get laughs from women who wouldn't last 5 minutes in my world. Bree clapped her hands together. "Oh, Vanna, you're brilliant. I should try this with Derek. He's always mansplaining my own job to me." "The key," Kalia added with professional authority, "is consistency. Hayes needs to understand that these boundaries are non-negotiable. No exceptions, no special circumstances." Ayla finally looked up from her phone, her eyes bright with malicious interest. "What happens if he breaks the rules? You need consequences. Or it's just empty threats." Vanna smiled, the same smile she wore when she'd backed an opposing counsel into a corner. "Public correction. If Hayes violates any rule in front of others, I address it immediately and directly. No private conversations later, no saving his ego." They were talking about me like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. Like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. The conversation flowed around me, through me, over me, but never included me. "You know what I love about this?" Bree said, refilling her wine glass. "It's not mean, it's just practical. Hayes gets clear expectations. You get the respect you deserve. Everyone wins." "Exactly," Vanna agreed. "I'm not trying to control him. I'm just establishing appropriate boundaries for our social interactions." I watched them congratulate each other on their wisdom while my wife systematically dismantled 22 years of marriage. The worst part wasn't the rules themselves, it was the casual cruelty of it all. The assumption that I would simply accept this new reality because they'd decided it was best for me. So, Hayes, Vanna said, turning to me with theatrical sweetness, do you understand the new arrangement? Are you ready to try being a better partner? 4 pairs of eyes focused on me, waiting for my compliance, expecting it. Kalia had her pen poised over her journal, ready to record my submission. Bree was practically bouncing in her chair with anticipation. Isla had her phone angled toward me, probably recording for her social media audience. And Vanna looked at me with the confidence of someone who'd never lost an argument in her life. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. Set it gently on the table between us. The simple black rectangle seemed to draw everyone's attention like a loaded weapon. No, I said quietly. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Simple, clear, final. Vanna blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. Excuse me? I said no. I kept my voice level, conversational. I don't accept your rules, Vanna. I don't accept your boundaries, and I definitely don't accept being treated like a misbehaving child in my own home. Kalia leaned forward, her therapist instincts kicking in. Hayes, I think what Vanna is trying to... I wasn't talking to you, Kalia. I didn't look at her, keeping my eyes on my wife. In fact, I think it's time we talked about some rules of my own. Bree laughed nervously. Hayes, come on. Don't be so sensitive. Vanna's just trying to help you be more... More what, Bree? I picked up my phone, swiped to unlock it. More compliant? More willing to pretend I don't notice things? Ayla's finger hovered over her phone screen, sensing drama, but not sure if she should be recording or running. Notice what things? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I looked around the table, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Should I start with you, Ayla? Or would you prefer I begin with the group chat you all think I don't know about? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vanna's confident expression flickered for just a moment before she regained control. Hayes, you're being paranoid, she said, but her voice had lost some of its authority. There's no group chat. You're imagining things. I opened my Messages app and began scrolling. Funny thing about shared cloud storage, Vanna. When you use the same account for 5 years, things sync automatically. Messages, photos, location data, all of it. Kalia's pen had stopped moving. Bree's wine glass was frozen halfway to her lips. Ayla's phone had slowly lowered to the table. 3 weeks ago, I continued, reading from my screen. Ayla to the group. Can't believe Hayes is still clueless about V and J. How long are we supposed to keep pretending? Anyone want to explain who J is? The silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Vanna's face had gone pale, but she was still trying to maintain control. You're taking things out of context, she said. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I scrolled down further. Here's Kalia from 2 weeks ago. Told V she needs to be more careful. Hayes isn't as stupid as he looks. Thank you for that ringing endorsement, by the way. Kalia's journal slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Hayes, listen. And my personal favorite, I continued, finding the message I'd been looking for. Bree, just 5 days ago. If Hayes finds out about the cabin weekend, V is screwed. Good thing he's too busy with his boxing losers to pay attention. Bree made a small choking sound. Her face had turned the color of old paper. The cabin weekend, I repeated, setting my phone down and looking directly at my wife. Want to tell me about the cabin weekend, Vanna? Or should I just read the GPS data from your car? Vanna's composure finally cracked. Hayes, you don't understand the situation. It's complicated. No, it's really not. I stood up, pushing my chair back from the table. It's actually very simple. While you were making rules about how I should behave in my own home, you were planning weekend getaways with your coworker. While you were telling your friends how clueless I am, You were lying to my face every single day. I walked around the table slowly, letting my words sink in. But here's the thing about rules, Vanna. They only work when everyone agrees to follow them. And I never agreed to be the only honest person in this marriage. Ayla found her voice first. Hayes, maybe we should all just calm down. Oh, we're just getting started, Ayla. I stopped behind Vanna's chair, close enough to smell her expensive perfume. See, while you were all having your little group chat about my stupidity, I was doing some research of my own. I pulled out a manila folder from under my placemat. I'd hidden it there before dinner started. The papers inside represented weeks of careful investigation, cross-referencing, and documentation. Bank records, I said, spreading the first set of papers across the table. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, all very interesting when you compare them to the dates Vanna claimed to be working late or attending legal conferences. Vanna spun in her chair to face me. You went through my personal financial information? That's a violation of what? Our marriage vows? Because I'm pretty sure those got violated first. I laid out more papers. Phone records showing texts and calls to numbers that definitely don't belong to legal colleagues, unless Morrison and Associates started hiring from the local fitness center. Kalia was gathering her things, clearly wanting to escape. I think maybe we should leave you two to work this out privately. Sit down, Kalia. My voice carried enough authority to freeze her in place. We're not done here. See, the really interesting thing about doing thorough research is what you discover about everyone involved. I turned to face the three women who'd been so eager to establish rules for my behavior. Did you know that Bree's husband Derek has been asking questions about her Tuesday night book club? Apparently he drove by the library last week. Funny thing, it was closed. Bree's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Red wine spread across the boards like spilled secrets. And Ayla, I continued, your boyfriend Marcus has been wondering about those late-night content creation sessions, especially since your location services show you at the Riverside Motel instead of your apartment. Ayla's phone clattered to the table. How did you... The same way I found out about Kalia's very unprofessional relationship with her client's husband. Amazing what people will tell you when they think you're just the clueless husband who doesn't pay attention. Kalia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need to leave. This is inappropriate. What's inappropriate, I said, moving to block her path to the door, is three women conspiring to help my wife cheat on me while simultaneously mocking me for not knowing about it. What's inappropriate is sitting in my house, eating food I paid for, drinking wine I bought, while planning how to better deceive me. The room had gone completely quiet, except for the sound of Ayla's panicked breathing and the drip of wine from the table edge. So here are my rules, I continued, walking back to my chair and sitting down. Rule 1, no more group chats about my marriage. Rule 2, no more weekend getaways funded by our joint account. Rule 3, no more treating me like I'm too stupid to notice when my wife comes home smelling like another man's cologne. Vanna finally found her voice. Hayes, if you would just let me explain. Explain what? How you've been planning to leave me but wanted to make sure you had all your ducks in a row first? How you've been building a case for why I'm an inadequate husband while secretly building a relationship with someone else? I leaned back in my chair, feeling strangely calm. Or maybe you want to explain how you convinced your friends to help you gaslight me into thinking I was paranoid and controlling. I picked up one more paper from my folder, the one I'd been saving for last. Or maybe you want to explain this lease agreement for an apartment downtown, signed 3 weeks ago, with a move-in date of next month. The paper fluttered to the table like a fallen leaf. Vanna stared at it like it might bite her. You see, ladies, the real rule is this. If you're going to play games with someone's life, you better make sure they don't know how to play games better than you do. I stood up again, straightening my jacket. Dinner's over. I suggest you all go home and figure out how you're going to explain tonight to the people who actually trust you. As I walked toward the door, I could hear chairs scraping, hushed whispers, and the sound of papers being frantically gathered. But I didn't look back. The game had changed, and for the first time in months, I was the one making the rules. Mrs. Granger was watering her petunias when I stepped onto the front porch the next morning. She'd lived next door for 15 years, and in all that time, I'd never seen those flowers look anything but perfect. What I had seen was her uncanny ability to be outside whenever something interesting happened on our block. "Morning, Hayes," she called over the fence, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant she'd been waiting for this conversation. "Quite a bit of activity at your place last night. Everything all right?" I walked over to the fence, coffee mug in hand. Mrs. Granger was 73 years old, 5 feet tall, and had the observational skills of a trained detective. She also ran the neighborhood Facebook group, managed the local gossip network, and somehow always knew when packages were delivered before the homeowners did. "Just had some friends over for dinner," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "You know how it is." She nodded sagely, but her eyes were sharp behind her wire-rimmed glasses. "Those friends left in quite a hurry. That red-headed one, Bree, isn't it, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Nearly backed into my mailbox." "Dinner didn't go quite as planned," I admitted. Mrs. Granger set down her watering can and leaned against the fence. This was her signal that she was ready for the full story. In the 15 years I'd known her, she'd never once settled in for gossip that wasn't worth her time. "You know, Hayes," she said carefully, "I've been meaning to mention something. Been seeing Vanna's car gone quite a bit on weekends lately. Unusual hours during the week, too." I looked at her more closely. "How unusual?" "Well, last Tuesday she left at 6 in the morning, came back around 11 at night. Wednesday gone from noon until after midnight. Thursday—" She paused, as if deciding how much to share. "Thursday, she didn't come home at all." The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I kept sipping it anyway. "You keep pretty close track of the neighborhood comings and goings. When you've lived somewhere as long as I have, you notice patterns," she said diplomatically. "And when patterns change suddenly, well, sometimes that means trouble." A car pulled into my driveway, Vanna's silver sedan, returning from whatever early morning errand she'd invented to avoid facing me. She got out slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. Even from 50 feet away, I could see the exhaustion in her posture. "Speak of the devil," Mrs. Granger murmured, then louder. "Good morning, Vanna. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Vanna looked up, startled. She'd probably forgotten that other people existed in her carefully constructed world of secrets and lies. "Oh, yes, beautiful." She hurried toward the front door, keys jingling in her hand like wind chimes in a storm. "Vanna," I called out, "we need to talk." She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. "I don't think that's a good idea right now, Hayes. We both said things last night that we probably regret." "I don't regret anything I said last night." I set my coffee mug on the fence post and walked toward her. "But I do think we should discuss what happens next." Mrs. Granger had picked up her watering can again, but she wasn't fooling anyone. Her flowers were already soaked. "Not out here," Vanna said quietly. "Not in front of the neighbors." "Why not? You didn't seem concerned about privacy when you were discussing our marriage with your friends, when you were making rules about my behavior in public." Vanna's face flushed red. "That was different." "How was it different?" "Because—" She searched for the right words, flicking a nervous glance at Mrs. Granger, who was now clearly eavesdropping while pretending to tend her roses. "Because this is our private business." I almost laughed. "Our private business? Vanna, you've been sharing our private business with half the city. Your friends, your coworkers, probably your hairdresser and the barista at that coffee shop you like so much. Hayes, please, can we just go inside and talk like adults?" "Like adults?" I took another step closer. "Adults don't make unilateral rules for their spouses. Adults don't sneak around behind their partner's back. Adults don't lie about working late when they're actually at hotels with other people. Mrs. Granger had given up all pretense of gardening. She was standing at the fence now, her full attention on our conversation. "You're being unreasonable," Vanna said, her voice rising slightly. "You're upset, and you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months." I pulled out my phone again. "Want me to read some more of those group chat messages? I've got plenty more where those came from." Vanna's eyes darted to Mrs. Granger, then back to me. "You wouldn't." "Try me." For a long moment we stared at each other across the driveway. 22 years of marriage, and it had come down to this. A standoff in front of the neighbors with secrets and lies scattered between us like broken glass. "Fine," Vanna said finally. 5 minutes. Inside." She opened the front door and disappeared into the house. I followed, but not before nodding to Mrs. Granger. "Have a good day, Mrs. G. I'm sure I'll see you around." She smiled, the kind of smile that meant she'd be making phone calls within the hour. "I'm sure you will, Hayes. Take care of yourself." Inside, Vanna was pacing the living room like a caged animal. She'd changed clothes since last night. Gone was the power suit, replaced by jeans and a sweater, but she still carried herself like she was preparing for battle. "You can't do this," she said without preamble. "You can't air our personal problems in front of the entire neighborhood." I sat down in my favorite chair, the one she'd tried to ban me from the night before. "I can do whatever I want, Vanna. That's the beauty of not caring about your opinion anymore." "Don't be childish." "Childish?" I leaned forward. "You want to know what's childish? Sneaking around like a teenager, making up elaborate lies about where you're going and who you're with, convincing your friends to help you deceive your husband." She stopped pacing and turned to face me. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." "How was it supposed to happen?" "You were going to keep lying until you had everything arranged, then present me with divorce papers as a fait accompli." Her silence was answer enough. "That's exactly what you were planning," I continued. "String me along until you had the apartment set up, your finances separated, your story straight, then blindside me with the whole thing and make it look like it was all my fault." "Hayes, how long?" I interrupted. "How long have you been planning this?" She sat down on the couch across from me, suddenly looking older than her 41 years. "It wasn't planned. It just evolved." "That's not an answer." 6 months, she said quietly. "Maybe 7. 7 months. While I'd been trying to figure out why she seemed distant, why she was working so much, why she'd stopped laughing at my jokes or asking about my day. She'd been systematically planning to end our marriage. And your friends knew the whole time? Not the whole time. Kalia figured it out first. She's good at reading people. Bree and Ayla. They found out gradually. But they all helped you lie to me. They were trying to help me figure out what I wanted." I stood up abruptly. "What you wanted? What about what we wanted? What about our marriage, our commitments, our life together?" "Our life together wasn't working, Hayes. You know that." "I know that now, but I didn't know it 7 months ago because you never bothered to tell me. You never said you were unhappy. You never suggested counseling or therapy or even a conversation about what wasn't working." Vanna looked down at her hands. "I tried to talk to you." "When? When did you try to talk to me?" "You were always at the gym or watching sports or working on some project in the garage. You weren't available for serious conversations." I felt something hot and angry rising in my chest. "So instead of making an appointment to talk, instead of saying, 'Hayes, we need to discuss our marriage,' you decided to start seeing someone else. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I felt invisible, like I was living with a roommate instead of a husband. You never asked about my work, never seemed interested in my goals or my dreams. When I got promoted, you said, 'That's nice,' and went back to watching television. The accusation hit harder than I'd expected because there was truth in it. I had become complacent. I had stopped asking questions, stopped paying attention to the details of her daily life. So you decided to find someone who would pay attention to you. I didn't decide anything. It just happened. People don't just accidentally start relationships, Vanna. They make choices. You chose to respond to his attention. You chose to meet him for coffee or lunch or whatever the first step was. You chose to lie to me about where you were going. She looked up at me then, and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret. You're right. I made choices. But so did you, Hayes. You chose to stop trying in our marriage long before I started looking elsewhere. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had stopped trying, but that didn't justify what came next. Okay, I said. Let's say you're right. Let's say I became a terrible, inattentive husband. That still doesn't explain the group chat, the mocking, the rules you tried to impose last night. Her face hardened again. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. I told the truth in front of your friends. There's a difference. You violated my privacy. You went through my personal communications. Your personal communications about our marriage, about my supposed stupidity, about how clueless I was while you were cheating on me. I walked toward the window, looking out at Mrs. Granger's perfect garden. Tell me about him. What? Your boyfriend? Your coworker? Tell me about him. Hayes, I don't think... His name is Jason, right? Jason Martinez from the litigation department. Divorced, 2 kids he sees every other weekend, drives a black BMW, works out at that expensive gym downtown. I turned back to face her. Did I miss anything? Her face had gone pale again. How do you know all that? Same way I knew about the apartment lease and the hotel receipts. I pay attention when it matters. You had me investigated. I investigated my own life, Vanna. When your wife starts acting like a stranger, when money starts disappearing from joint accounts, when she stops coming home at normal hours, you start asking questions. I pulled out my phone again. Want to see the photos? You and Jason at Romano's last Tuesday. You and Jason at the Riverside Motel last Friday. You and Jason apartment hunting downtown last weekend. She stood up quickly. Stop it. Just stop. Why? Because it's uncomfortable? Because it makes your choices look as sordid as they actually are? Because it's over, she shouted. Because I'm done with this marriage, and I'm done with you, and I'm done pretending that any of this can be fixed. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. For 22 years, we'd never shouted at each other. We'd disagreed, certainly. We'd had arguments and cold silences and periods of distance, but we'd never stood in our living room and screamed about the end of our marriage. Good, I said quietly, because I'm done pretending too. I walked past her toward the stairs. I'll be staying at Murphy's gym for a while. There's an apartment above the office that Murphy lets people use when they need it. You can have the house until we figure out the legal details. Hayes, wait. I paused at the bottom of the stairs. What? What are you going to do about everything? I looked back at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still poised, still every inch the successful attorney she'd worked so hard to become. But she was also a stranger, someone who could plan the destruction of our marriage while serving me coffee every morning. Someone who could mock me with her friends while sharing a bed with me every night. I'm going to pack some clothes, I said. And then I'm going to figure out what my life looks like without you in it. That's not what I meant. I knew what she meant. She wanted to know if I was going to make things difficult, if I was going to contest the divorce, fight for the house, make her affair public knowledge. She wanted to know if I was going to be the reasonable, accommodating Hayes she'd grown used to, or if I was going to be something else entirely. I guess you'll find out, I said, and headed upstairs to pack. Behind me, I heard her sink back onto the couch. Through the bedroom window, I could see Mrs. Granger still in her garden, her phone pressed to her ear. The neighborhood network was already humming with news. By tomorrow, half the city would know that the Relans' marriage was over. The only question was what version of the story they'd hear first. I had a feeling it was going to be mine. Murphy's gym smelled like sweat, determination, and 40 years of dreams that refused to quit. The building had been a lot of things over the decades: a warehouse, a dance studio, a furniture store. But for the last 15 years, it had been the place where people came to hit things legally and feel better about their lives. Murphy himself was 72 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and had the kind of wisdom that only comes from watching people fight their demons in 3-minute rounds. He'd been expecting me. "Heard you might need the upstairs room," he said without preamble when I walked in with my duffel bag. "Mrs. Patterson called about an hour ago. Said there was some excitement in the neighborhood." Mrs. Patterson lived 2 houses down from Mrs. Granger. The speed of neighborhood communication never ceased to amaze me. "News travels fast around here," I said. "News about marital trouble travels faster than most." Murphy was wrapping his hands, getting ready for his daily workout despite being older than most people's grandfathers. "You want to talk about it, or you want to hit something?" I looked around the gym. It was early afternoon, so the place was mostly empty except for a few dedicated regulars. Tommy Kowalski was working the speed bag in the corner, preparing for a fight next month. Sarah Chen was doing footwork drills, her movements precise and economical. Both of them nodded when they saw me, but didn't interrupt their training. "Can I do both?" I asked. Murphy grinned, the first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. That's why they invented heavy bags and long conversations. Get changed, then come find me. The apartment above the gym was spartanly furnished, but clean. A bed, a dresser, a small kitchen, and a bathroom that had seen better decades but still functioned. The windows looked out over the downtown area, where I could see the office building where Vanna worked, the restaurant where she'd tried to establish her rules, and the general direction of the apartment she'd secretly leased. I changed into workout clothes and headed back downstairs. Murphy was waiting by the heavy bags, holding a pair of gloves and a roll of hand wraps. "Talk while you wrap," he said. "Then we'll see how much anger you're carrying around." I started wrapping my hands, the familiar ritual somehow calming. "How much do you already know?" "I know your wife's been making you feel small. I know she's been seeing someone else. I know you found out about it in a way that made her look foolish in front of her friends." Murphy leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "What I don't know is what you're planning to do about it." "I don't know either." "Sure you do. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet." I finished wrapping my left hand and started on the right. "She wants a divorce, has for months apparently. Already has an apartment picked out, probably has a lawyer lined up too." And what? "And what do you want, Hayes? Not what she wants, not what's practical, not what's easiest. What do you want?" I pulled on the boxing gloves, flexing my fingers to make sure they fit properly. "I want her to understand what she's done. I want her friends to understand what they've done. I want consequences." "Consequences for what?" "For lying. For cheating. For treating me like I was too stupid to notice. For making me feel like I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong." Murphy nodded slowly. "You want revenge." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Revenge was supposed to be beneath me, wasn't it? I was supposed to be the bigger person, the mature adult who handled marital problems with dignity and grace. "Maybe," I admitted. "Nothing wrong with wanting revenge, as long as you're smart about it." Murphy pushed himself off the wall. "Start with some jabs. Light it first, then build up power." I began hitting the bag, the familiar rhythm helping me organize my thoughts. Jab, jab, cross, jab, jab, cross. "The thing about revenge," Murphy continued, "is that most people do it wrong. They get emotional, they act impulsively, they try to hurt people in ways that make them look like the villain." Jab, jab, hook. The bag swayed under the impact, but smart revenge Smart revenge is just truth delivered at the right time to the right people. I paused, gloves still raised. What do you mean? I mean your wife and her friends have been living in a bubble where their behavior doesn't have consequences, where they can lie and cheat and mock people without anyone calling them on it. Murphy walked around to the other side of the bag, steadying it. Maybe it's time to pop that bubble. How? Keep hitting. Think while you work. I resumed the combination. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. The bag absorbed each punch with a satisfying thud. Your wife's a lawyer, right? Cares about her reputation, her professional image. More than anything. And her friends? They care about their social standing, their marriages, their little secrets? Absolutely. Then you've got leverage. The question is how to use it without looking like the bad guy. I threw a particularly hard cross, putting my whole body behind it. I already used some of it last night. Told them I knew about their affairs, their lies. Good start, but that was just the opening bell. Now comes the real fight. Murphy walked over to a folding chair and sat down, his eyes never leaving me. Tell me about the friends. What makes them tick? I kept working the bag while I talked. Kalia's a therapist. Licensed, professional, probably makes good money helping people with their problems, but she's been having an affair with one of her clients' husbands. That's a career-ending scandal if it gets out. Bree's married to a guy who thinks she's faithful and devoted. She's been lying about her Tuesday night activities for months. And the third one? Ayla's got some kind of social media following, thousands of followers who think she's in a perfect relationship, but she's been cheating on her boyfriend with multiple people. Murphy nodded thoughtfully. So they've all got something to lose, something they care about more than your marriage. Seems that way. And they've all been helping your wife deceive you while protecting their own secrets. Right. Then the solution is simple. Make their secrets not secret anymore. I stopped punching and turned to look at him. You mean expose them? I mean let the truth come out naturally, in ways that don't make you look vindictive or cruel. How do I do that? Murphy stood up and walked over to me. Take off the gloves. Let's work on footwork while we plan. I pulled off the gloves and unwrapped my hands. Murphy led me to an open area of the gym where he'd set up cones and markers for footwork drills. The key to good boxing, he said, is patience. You don't throw your biggest punch in the first round. You study your opponent, you find their weaknesses, you wait for the right moment. I began moving through the footwork pattern, forward, back, side to side, always maintaining balance. Your wife and her friends made a mistake last night. They showed you their weaknesses. Now you need to be patient and systematic about exploiting them. What do you mean? I mean you don't try to destroy all of them at once. You pick them off one at a time, let them turn on each other. The footwork was getting easier, more natural. My body remembered the patterns even when my mind was focused on other things. Start with the weakest link, Murphy continued. Which one of them is most likely to crack under pressure? I thought about it while I moved through the drill. Bree, probably. She's not as smart as the others, and she's got the most to lose if her husband finds out. Good. So you apply pressure to Bree first. Nothing dramatic, nothing that looks like harassment. Just let her know that you know and that keeping your mouth shut isn't guaranteed. How do I do that? Murphy smiled. Not the friendly smile from earlier, but something sharper. You're a creative guy, Hayes. I'm sure you'll think of something. I spent the next hour working through various drills, while Murphy offered suggestions that ranged from subtle to diabolical. By the time we finished, I had the beginnings of a plan. Remember, Murphy said as we cleaned up the equipment, the goal isn't just to hurt them. The goal is to make sure they can't hurt anyone else the same way. You think I'm doing the right thing? Murphy looked at me seriously. I think you're doing the necessary thing. Your wife and her friends thought they could treat you like garbage without consequences. They thought they were smarter than you, more sophisticated, more deserving of respect. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Maybe they were right about some of that. Maybe you did get complacent in your marriage. But that doesn't give them the right to lie, cheat, and mock you behind your back. So what happens after? After I've had my revenge? After you build a new life. One where people treat you with respect, because they know what happens when they don't. That evening I sat in the apartment above the gym, looking out at the city lights and thinking about Murphy's advice. My phone had been buzzing all day with messages from Vanna, from her friends, from mutual acquaintances who'd heard rumors about our separation. I ignored most of them. But there was one message I couldn't ignore. A text from Bree, sent just an hour ago. "Hayes, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding about last night." I stared at the message for a long time, thinking about footwork and patience, and picking off the weakest link first. Then I typed back, "Sure, Bree. Let's talk." The first round was about to begin. Bree wanted to meet at Starbucks. Neutral ground, she said, somewhere public where we could have a reasonable conversation. I suggested Murphy's gym instead, my territory, my rules. She showed up 20 minutes late wearing designer jeans and a nervous expression. The gym was busier in the evening, with the after-work crowd getting their aggression out on heavy bags and speed bags. The sound of leather hitting leather filled the air like a violent percussion section. "This place is intense," Bree said, looking around nervously at the sweating, focused fighters. "It's honest," I replied. "Nobody here pretends to be something they're not." We sat at a small table in the corner that Murphy used for consultations with new members. From here, I could see the entire gym, and more importantly, everyone in the gym could see us. "Hayes, about last night," Bree began, her voice pitched higher than usual. "I think you misunderstood some things. The group chat, the comments about you. It wasn't malicious. We were just trying to help Vanna work through her feelings." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Bree had always been the follower in Vanna's group of friends. Pretty enough, social enough, but lacking the confidence to lead or the intelligence to manipulate. She was perfect for what I had in mind. Help her work through her feelings about what exactly? About your marriage. About whether she was happy, whether things could be fixed. By encouraging her to have an affair? Bree's eyes darted around the gym, taking in the fighters, the punching bags, the general atmosphere of controlled violence. We didn't encourage anything. We just listened. You listened while she told you about her secret apartment. You listened while she planned weekend getaways with another man. You listened while she mocked me for being too stupid to notice. I kept my voice calm, conversational. That's not listening, Bree. That's being an accessory. An accessory to what? Having feelings? Being confused about her marriage? An accessory to fraud. Vanna used our joint credit card to pay for hotels where she met her boyfriend. She used our joint account to pay deposits on an apartment I knew nothing about. In legal terms, that's theft. Bree's face went pale. "Hayes, you're not thinking of pressing charges, are you? I mean, that would destroy her career." "Her career?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What about my life, Bree? What about the 22 years I invested in a marriage that she was secretly planning to end?" "But pressing charges? That seems so extreme." I leaned forward, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. "You know what's extreme? Having your wife's friends laugh at you while she cheats on you. Having people you trusted treat you like you're too stupid to deserve the truth. We never meant—" "Yes, you did." I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat screenshots. "Here's your message from 3 weeks ago. Hayes is such a clueless loser. How does he not notice that V comes home smelling like another man? Does that sound like someone who didn't mean it?" Bree stared at the phone screen like it was a snake about to strike. "You can't show that to people. It was private." "Private? You sent it to 3 other people, Bree. That's not private, that's gossip." "But if Derek saw that—" She trailed off, realizing what she'd just admitted. "If Derek saw what? That you think I'm a clueless loser? Or that you've been lying to him about your Tuesday night activities? The color drained from her face completely. What do you know about my Tuesday nights? I scrolled through more screenshots. Let's see. Can't wait for book club tonight. Derek actually believes I'm reading romance novels with the girls. That was from 2 weeks ago. Hayes, please. And here's a good one from last Tuesday. Thank God Derek works late on Tuesdays. Gives me plenty of time with M before I have to go home and pretend to be the perfect wife. Bree was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had turned white. Who's M, Bree? It's not what you think. I think M is Mike Hendricks from your yoga class. Divorced, good-looking, drives that red pickup truck that's been parked outside the Riverside Motel every Tuesday for the past month. She made a small, choking sound. How do you know about Mike? Same way I know about the credit card you've been using to pay for the motel room, the one Derek doesn't know about. That's impossible. I've been careful. You've been sloppy, Bree. You and all your friends. You got so comfortable with your lies that you forgot other people might be paying attention. I put my phone away and leaned back in my chair. Around us, the sounds of the gym continued, the rhythmic pounding of bags, the shuffle of feet, the occasional grunt of exertion. But at our table, there was only silence and the sound of Bree's panicked breathing. What do you want? She finally asked. I want honesty. I want accountability. I want consequences for actions. What kind of consequences? I looked around the gym, taking my time before answering. That depends on how cooperative you decide to be. Cooperative with what? With the truth. About Vanna, about her affair, about the planning and scheming you've all been doing behind my back. Bree shook her head quickly. I can't do that. Vanna's my friend. I can't betray her confidence. But you could betray mine? You could help her lie to me for months while laughing about how stupid I was? That's different. How is it different? She struggled for an answer that wouldn't make her sound completely hypocritical. Because you're not really our friend. You're Vanna's husband. The honesty was refreshing, even if it was brutal. So husbands don't deserve loyalty or respect. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Bree. You chose sides. You chose to help my wife deceive me rather than encourage her to be honest about her feelings. You chose to mock me rather than suggest marriage counseling. You chose to be part of the problem rather than part of the solution. I stood up, signaling that our conversation was coming to an end. Now you get to choose again. You can help me understand exactly what's been going on, or you can keep protecting Vanna while I protect myself. Protect yourself how? I looked down at her, this woman who'd sat at my dinner table dozens of times, who'd eaten food I'd cooked and drunk wine I'd bought, who'd smiled to my face while plotting behind my back. Derek seems like a nice guy, I said casually. Hardworking, loyal, trusting. The kind of man who deserves to know the truth about his wife's Tuesday night activities. Bree shot to her feet. You can't tell Derek. It would destroy our marriage. Like you helped destroy mine? That's not the same thing, isn't it? Derek trusts you the same way I trusted Vanna. He believes your lies the same way I believed hers. He thinks he's married to someone honest and faithful, just like I did. But Derek and I can work things out. Our situation is different. How is it different? Because I still love him. I made mistakes, but I still want our marriage to work. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Did it ever occur to you that I still loved Vanna? That I might have wanted our marriage to work if she'd been honest with me instead of planning her exit strategy in secret? Bree sank back into her chair, the fight going out of her. What do you want me to do? I want you to tell me everything. Every conversation, every plan, every lie you helped coordinate. I want to know how long this has been going on, who else knows about it, and what Vanna's real timeline is for leaving me. And if I do that? Then Derek doesn't get an anonymous email with screenshots of your group chat messages and photos of your Tuesday night activities. She stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. "You're not the person I thought you were," she said finally. "No, I'm not. I'm not the harmless, clueless husband you could mock and manipulate. I'm someone who fights back when people try to destroy his life." Bree looked around the gym again, taking in the fighters, the equipment, the atmosphere of barely controlled aggression. "This place really is you, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, we all thought you were just some boring guy who liked to hit punching bags. We didn't realize you were actually learning how to fight." I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in days. "I've been learning for 20 years, Bree. I just never had a reason to use it before." She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking slightly. "What do you want to know first?" "Everything," I said, sitting back down. "Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out." For the next hour, Bree told me everything. About how Vanna had first mentioned being unhappy 6 months ago. About how they'd encouraged her to explore her options rather than work on our marriage. About how they'd helped her research divorce lawyers and apartment rentals. About how they'd covered for her when she started seeing Jason, providing alibis and excuses. She told me about the group chat that went back months, filled with discussions about my supposed inadequacies and Vanna's plans for her new life. She told me about the shopping trips to buy clothes for Vanna's dates, the restaurant recommendations for romantic dinners I wasn't invited to, the advice on how to hide evidence of her affair. Most damaging of all, she told me about the timeline. Vanna planned to file for divorce in 3 weeks, after she'd moved into her new apartment and established a paper trail showing that I was an absent, inattentive husband who'd driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. "She's been documenting everything," Bree admitted, "taking photos of you at the gym instead of home, screenshots of times you didn't respond to her texts immediately, records of social events you missed because you were working. Building a case. Building a narrative. She wants to make it look like the marriage failed because you checked out emotionally." I felt that cold, practical anger settling in my chest again. Not the hot rage that makes people do stupid things, but the cold calculation that makes people do effective things. "What about Kalia and Ayla? How deep are they in this?" "Kalia's been acting as her unofficial therapist, helping her process her feelings about leaving you. Ayla's been documenting everything on social media, creating a record of Vanna as this strong, independent woman who's outgrown her marriage. And their own affairs?" Bree hesitated. "What about them?" "Don't play dumb now, Bree. You've been honest so far." She sighed. "Kalia's situation is complicated. The man she's seeing is married to one of her clients. If it came out, she'd lose her license and probably face a lawsuit. And Ayla? Ayla's been seeing multiple people while posting about her perfect relationship online. Her boyfriend has no idea, and neither do her followers." I nodded, filing away the information. "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what are you going to tell Vanna about our conversation tonight?" Bree looked miserable. "I don't know. She's going to ask questions when I don't show up to our usual group chat check-in." "Then tell her the truth. Tell her I know everything, and I'm not going to be the accommodating husband she was counting on." "She's not going to like that." "I don't particularly care what Vanna likes anymore." I stood up again. "But I do care what Derek likes. He seems like the kind of man who values honesty in a marriage." "Hayes, please, I told you everything you wanted to know." "You did, and I appreciate that. It shows you're capable of honesty when the stakes are high enough." "So you won't tell Derek?" I looked down at her, this woman who'd helped orchestrate the destruction of my marriage while conducting her own affair behind her husband's back. "I won't tell Derek," I said finally. "But only if you do exactly what I say from now on." Relief flooded her face. "Anything. What do you want me to do?" "I want you to keep talking to Vanna and the others. I want you to report back to me about their plans, their conversations, their strategies. You want me to spy on them? I want you to tell me the truth about what they're planning. The same truth you should have told me months ago. Bree nodded reluctantly. Okay, I can do that. And Bree? I waited until she met my eyes. If you try to warn them about this conversation, if you try to help them prepare for what's coming, Derek gets those screenshots before morning. Understand? I understand. Good. Now go home to your husband. Spend some time thinking about whether he deserves better than a wife who lies to him every Tuesday night. She gathered her purse and jacket, moving like someone who'd just survived a car accident. At the door, she turned back. Hayes? Yeah? For what it's worth, I'm sorry about all of it. I watched her walk out into the night, her shoulders hunched against more than just the cold. Around me, the gym was starting to empty out as people finished their workouts and headed home to their families, their dinners, their honest lives. Murphy appeared at my elbow, having watched the entire conversation from across the room. How'd it go? He asked. Better than expected. She told me everything. And now? Now I know exactly what I'm dealing with, and I know exactly what I'm going to do about it. Murphy nodded approvingly. Remember what I said about patience. You've got them worried now, but worried people make mistakes. Let them make the mistakes. What if they don't make mistakes? What if they're smarter than I think? Murphy looked around his gym, at the heavy bags, the speed bags, the ring where people learn to fight and be fought. Hayes, you've been training here for 20 years. In all that time, have you ever seen anyone get stronger by avoiding conflict? No. Then trust your training. Trust what you've learned about fighting and about people. And remember, you're not trying to destroy them. You're just trying to make sure they don't destroy anyone else. I looked out the window at the city lights, thinking about Vanna in our house, probably wondering what Bree had told me, thinking about Jason, probably unaware that his affair was about to become very public knowledge, thinking about Kalia and Ayla, probably confident that their secrets were safe. Round 2 starts tomorrow, I said. Murphy smiled. Make it count. The next morning brought a series of increasingly frantic text messages from Vanna, each one more desperate than the last, each one confirming that Bree had indeed reported back about our conversation. Hayes, we need to talk. Bree said some concerning things about your mental state. I'm worried about you. This obsession with revenge isn't healthy. Can we please discuss this like adults? I know you're hurt, but threatening my friends isn't the answer. Hayes, please call me back. We can work this out. I ignored them all while I went through my morning routine at the gym. Cardio, weights, heavy bag work, then a shower and breakfast at the diner across the street. By the time I was ready to start my day, Vanna had sent 14 messages and called 6 times. My phone rang again as I was walking back to the gym. This time it wasn't Vanna. It was Kalia. Hayes, I think we should talk, she said without preamble. As a professional, I'm concerned about some of the things I'm hearing. What kind of things? Bree mentioned that you've been making threats, talking about revenge, exhibiting some concerning behaviors. I almost laughed. Concerning to whom? To anyone who cares about your well-being. Hayes, I know you're going through a difficult time, but the way you're handling this situation isn't healthy. And how should I be handling it, Dr. Darren? Should I be quietly accepting my wife's affair? Should I be grateful that she's planning to leave me for another man? You should be focusing on processing your emotions in a constructive way rather than lashing out at people who are trying to help. Help who? Help Vanna cover up her lies? Help her build a case for why our marriage failed? There was a pause. I think you're misunderstanding the situation. I think I'm understanding it perfectly. You've been acting as Vanna's unofficial therapist while she planned to end our marriage. You've been helping her justify her affair by pathologizing my behavior. That's not what happened. Isn't it? Let me guess. You've been telling her that I'm emotionally unavailable, that I've been neglecting her needs, that she deserves better than what our marriage was providing? Another pause, longer this time. Hayes, even if some of that is true, it doesn't justify the way you're acting now. The way I'm acting now? You mean expecting honesty from people? Demanding consequences for betrayal? I mean threatening people, violating their privacy, trying to destroy their relationships out of spite. I stopped walking and leaned against a lamppost. Tell me about Marcus Hendley, Kalia. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Marcus Hendley, I repeated. Married to Janet Hendley, who happens to be one of your therapy clients. Father of two, works in accounting, has no idea his wife is paying you to help her with her marriage problems while you're having an affair with him. How did you? She caught herself, but it was too late. How did I find out? Same way I found out about everything else, by paying attention. Hayes, you don't understand the complexity of the situation. I understand that you're violating every ethical guideline in your profession. I understand that you're helping one woman work on her marriage while actively destroying it by sleeping with her husband. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're a licensed therapist who's having an affair with a client's spouse. That's grounds for losing your license, facing a lawsuit, and probably criminal charges. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd been collecting. Hotel receipts with both your names, restaurant charges on the same nights, GPS data showing your car at his apartment when his wife was in session with you. That's circumstantial. Maybe. But it's enough to trigger an investigation by the state licensing board, and once they start investigating, they tend to find everything. Kalia's breathing had become audible over the phone. What do you want? I want you to stop pretending you're concerned about my mental health when you're really concerned about your own secrets coming out. And I want you to admit that you've been helping Vanna plan her exit from our marriage instead of encouraging her to work on it. I can't do that. Client confidentiality. Vanna isn't your client, Kalia. She's your friend who you've been giving free therapy to while she cheats on her husband. There's no confidentiality protection for casual conversations. Another long silence. When Kalia spoke again, her voice had lost its professional authority. What happens if I tell you what you want to know? Then Janet Hendley doesn't get an anonymous tip about her husband's extracurricular activities. And if I don't? Then she gets a very detailed email with supporting documentation before the end of the day. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you the same choice you offered me, the truth or the consequences of lies. I could hear her moving around, probably pacing in her office between clients. This isn't who you are, Hayes. You're not a vindictive person. You're right. I wasn't a vindictive person. But I also wasn't a person whose wife was cheating on him while her friends helped cover it up. People change when their circumstances change. Vanna never meant to hurt you. But she did hurt me, and you helped her do it. We were trying to help her figure out what she wanted. By encouraging her to have an affair instead of working on her marriage? By helping her recognize that she was unhappy and deserved to pursue her own happiness. At my expense. Not intentionally. I started walking again, heading back toward the gym where Murphy would be waiting with more wisdom about patience and strategy. Kalia, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Did you encourage Vanna to leave me? I encouraged her to be honest about her feelings. That's not what I asked. A sigh. Yes. I told her that if she was truly unhappy, she should consider ending the marriage rather than staying in a situation that wasn't fulfilling for either of you. And did you encourage her to start seeing Jason before ending our marriage? I told her that sometimes people need to experience what they're missing before they can make major life decisions. So yes, you encouraged her to have an affair. I encouraged her to explore her options. While she was still married to me. Yes. Finally, some honesty. How long has this been going on? The conversations about her unhappiness? About 6 months? The encouragement to see other people? About 4 months. And you never once suggested marriage counseling? Couples therapy? Actually working on the problems in our relationship? Hayes, by the time Vanna came to me, she was already emotionally checked out of your marriage. Counseling only works when both people want to make it work. But I never got the chance to try because she never told me there were problems. She said she'd tried to talk to you. When? When did she try to talk to me about being unhappy? Another pause. I don't know the specifics. Because there aren't any specifics. She never tried to talk to me about anything. She just decided our marriage was over and started planning her exit strategy. Maybe that's true, but that doesn't justify what you're doing now. I reached the gym and stopped outside, looking up at the apartment window where I'd been living for the past 2 days. What I'm doing now is exactly what you encouraged Vanna to do, pursuing my own happiness at the expense of people who've been lying to me. That's different. How is it different? Because you're trying to hurt people. And Vanna wasn't trying to hurt me when she started her affair? You weren't trying to hurt me when you encouraged her to cheat rather than communicate? We were trying to help her find fulfillment. By destroying my life. By helping her build a better life. At my expense, I repeated. Without my knowledge, without my consent, without giving me any chance to address the problems in our marriage. Kalia was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, less certain. Maybe we made mistakes. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices to prioritize Vanna's happiness over my right to know the truth about my own marriage. What do you want me to do about it now? I want you to tell me everything, every conversation, every piece of advice you gave her, every step of the plan you helped her develop. And if I do that? Then Marcus's wife doesn't find out about your Tuesday afternoon meetings at the Riverside Motel. How do you know about... Never mind. I don't want to know. Smart choice. If I tell you what you want to know, what happens next? Do you just keep threatening all of us forever? I looked through the gym window and saw Murphy setting up equipment for the afternoon classes. Kids would be arriving soon, young people learning discipline, respect, and how to fight fair. I don't want to threaten anyone forever, Kalia. I just want the truth. All of it. And I want the people who helped destroy my marriage to understand that actions have consequences. And then? And then we'll see what happens next. That's not very reassuring. Neither was finding out that my wife's been planning to leave me for months while her friends helped her lie about it. Okay, she said finally. I'll tell you what you want to know, but not over the phone. Where? My office. After hours, when there won't be any clients around. When? Tonight, 7 o'clock. I'll be there. Hayes? Yeah? For what it's worth, I am sorry. About all of it. We'll see, I said, and hung up. Inside the gym, Murphy was waiting with a knowing look. How many rounds today? He asked. As many as it takes, I replied. Good answer. Let's get to work. As I wrapped my hands and prepared for another session of controlled violence, I thought about the conversation with Kalia. 2 down, 2 to go, and then the real fight could begin. But first, I had to survive whatever Vanna was planning. Because if I knew my wife, and after 22 years I thought I did, she wasn't going to take this lying down. The question was, what was she prepared to do to protect her carefully constructed new life? I was about to find out.